Hello, everyone. I'm Jason Haas, partner, general manager here at Tablas Creek. Welcome to the occasional Wednesday live broadcast. I am exceptionally excited for the guest that I have joining me today. It's Elizabeth Whitlow, the executive director of the Regenerative Organic Alliance. And we're going to get a chance to talk about the Regenerative Organic program that we have been involved in, that we got our certification for just in August, but also kind of how the wine community fits in more broadly in the organic movement. But Elizabeth is great. I'll be inviting her in a couple of minutes, but first, as I usually do, I want to give you all a tour of what is going on at the vineyard right now while we wait for people to join. So I'm going to start with what's going on out in the vineyard. We have had our first couple of hard freezes in the last few days, so I thought it would be fun to do a before and after. So this is a picture I took in the vineyard last week, and this is the same row today. You can see how we've gone basically from green leaves to brown leaves. Here's a close-up of what that looks like. This is not a bad thing. It's totally normal for this time of year. It's good for the vines. It forces them into dormancy. And honestly, it's better that it happens a little earlier, like this, in the beginning of November, than that it waits, because you really don't want the vines to be wasting any energy on growing new leaf material at this time of year. You want it to be storing everything in its roots. So it is a pretty dramatic visual transformation in the vineyard. But it's normal. It's what basically makes it look like November and not October. Some of the other things that we're doing in the vineyard, we are getting ready for rain. We got our first little bit of rain last weekend. We're expecting something a little bit more next week. This is what we're doing to keep erosion down. We put straw on the roads. We've been spreading compost. This is Jordy, our viticulturist, who's out there spraying down compost with some of the winery wastewater, which is full of lees and other great organic stuff. So we've put out tons and tons of our own site-made compost already. This is the compost that we're building for next year. We're getting ready to do some new planting. This is a block that had the original Mourvedre cuttings that we put in 1992. From American-sourced vines, and it was never a particularly great block. The American-sourced Mourvedre cuttings weren't super healthy. The wine wasn't very intense. We grafted it over to French-sourced clones about 15 years ago, and those weren't super healthy either. So we ended up pulling this out a couple of years ago. We've been letting it sit fallow, and we're going to be planting new Mourvedre here. This is one of 4 blocks that we'll plant this winter. The other thing that is exciting is that we've entered lambing season. So we have a handful of our first maybe 5 or 6 lambs for our flock. We're expecting somewhere in the neighborhood of 200 to 300 lambs born over the next couple of months. So give you a few pictures of the new additions. A couple there. See them in amongst the ewes. Our mastiffs are very proud, standing there, looking proprietary over the lambs. It's really pretty adorable. So we hope that you are looking forward to lots of baby lamb pictures over the next couple of months, because I don't think that we're going to be able to resist. In terms of what it looks like more broadly. Here, actually do this one. Here's a picture from the top of the vineyard. You can look down. This is looking down through Grenache and Counoise, eventually to Tannat and some Roussanne. You can see a little frost line on the left, which separates the area that's been frozen from areas a little higher up on the hills, which haven't been frozen yet, but will be soon. It's also getting towards olive season. We have a couple different varieties of olives that are getting close to ripeness. We'll pick them before the end of the month. We have some Manzanilla olives. We've got some Mission olives. We've got some Niels olives, Picholines. Some of them are turning purple. Some of them are still green. In the cellar, we're doing lots of organizing. We're done. Everything is pressed off. I thought it would be fun to show. This is Muscardin, a little bit of Muscardin that we made this year. It's in a carboy now. We'll be evaluating it. But basically, it's time for cleaning. Lots of stuff is outside, getting hosed down. It's time for barreling down, reorganizing the cellar, and we're getting ready for our first bottling of, of this season. We're going to be bottling the 2019 Esprit Blanc. So we've been assembling that from all of its different vessels where it's been aging over the last few months. And then finally, in our tasting room, we have basically switched from trying to keep people cool to trying to keep people warm. We have several new heaters, so that will hopefully keep people as comfortable as possible. If we have made the decision that we're not going to be moving inside this winter, even if we are permitted to, we feel like it's really not COVID safe. So if you're interested in the background of my decision, I wrote a blog on that last week. So anyway, we feel good about our ability to keep you warm and comfortable outside. If there are a few days we have to close because it's stormy, we'll do it. It's better than putting our team and our guests at risk. Okay, I'm going to get rid of the pictures, and I am going to invite Elizabeth to join. So she'll be joining from the Regenerative Organic Instagram feed. And if you do not currently follow that feed, you should. It is inspiring and beautiful. So, hello, Elizabeth. I can see you, but I can't hear you yet. Can you hear me?
Let's see.
Oh, I can hear you now.
Oh, good. Okay. I was just exclaiming, yay, I did it. And then you couldn't hear me. So nice to see you. Thanks for the tour. It was great to be of the vineyard with you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. It's a time of year where there's a lot of changes that happen fast. I mean, we've gone from trying to keep the vines as healthy and growing and green and lush as possible to now we really would like them to go dormant overnight and allow us to focus on the soil and get the cover crop growing and all of that. So it looks very different than it did even a week ago. We've had 3 hard frosts in a row the last 3 nights. I lost your your audio again.
Shoot. Okay.
Now you're back.
I know why. It's because I put it down in the rest. Okay, I'll hold it. Yeah, that's fine. I was just saying, yeah, we've had 3 frosts up here the last few nights in Sonoma County as well.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so can you introduce yourself a little bit to people who maybe don't know you, and then we can talk about the Regenerative Organic Alliance and the work that we've been doing together and all of that. But introduce yourself first, if you would.
I would be happy to. I'm sure most of your people don't know me. A couple of my staff I saw coming on. So hi. Hi, people. I'm Elizabeth Whitlow. I'm the executive director of the Regenerative Organic Alliance. And we were founded by some amazing leaders in the organic sector, the Rodeo Institute, Patagonia Company, which you may know of as apparel, but also does a good bit of work in food now, and Dr. Bronner's, the beloved Dr. Bronner's company, and then another, like a range of other nonprofits who work in food and agriculture.
And so you are the executive director. What does that mean? How big is the program? How big is the team? What's involved in that?
Well, we started pretty small and now we're growing, and we have the founders from the Regenerative Organic Alliance came up with this vision for the future of agriculture. They were disenchanted with where they saw some weaknesses in the organic program, and they wanted to really add some real teeth and expand the meaning of organic to be something more holistic. So they came up with this vision for the framework, which you know well because you went through all the rigors of the audits with us during our pilot process. Our framework is on our website, and it's based on 3 pillars. And really, we're looking essentially at the health of the soil and the management practices and how it affects the land. We're looking at animal welfare practices, and then social fairness for the farmers and the workers. And we basically have this framework, which we piloted around the world. We had 8 different countries. We worked in 8 or 9 different states across the US as well as Canada. We concluded our pilot earlier this year, and then we took many months to bring in all the feedback from you all on how that framework worked out there in the real world with real farmers. And we assembled 4 different task forces to kind of go through all the details that you all provided us with feedback on, like what wasn't working and what was working. And different challenges that were presented by the framework. And then we've revised it. And now we have a staff of 5 of us, and we work with certifiers around the world. So we're basically what you call a scheme owner. We have the accreditation scheme, or we've created this certification, and then we have certified agencies that typically do your organic audits. They will be adding this on as an additional capacity. They basically call it a bundled audit.
Okay.
And then they will add it on to an audit for any of their organic clients. So,
cool.
Yeah.
So I'm sure people are probably, certainly the wine people who are likely watching this are familiar with how it works in wine, because there are organic, there are biodynamic wines. But the fact that this is just one piece of a larger framework is I think really fascinating for people. So what are some of the other product types that the ROA has created regenerative organic certified protocols for?
We had 19 different pilots in our program, and we had a wide variety of commodities that we tested this out on. We were in temperate zones, subtropical zones. We looked at annual systems and perennial systems, such as like grasslands where there's grazing cattle, like in the Dakotas. Actually, we worked with the Audubon Conservation Ranching Program. They've got a great program to look at preserving biodiversity and precious grasslands in the middle of this country. So they were part of our pilot. We also worked with like chocolate, cacao, coconut, palm, coffee, tropical fruits, mint. What else? As you all may know, if you know Dr. Bronner's, then you're probably quite acquainted with the that lovely blue bottle with the minty flavor. And so we worked with that co-op who produces the mint for them. And then their palm operation in Ghana was a really incredible demonstration of agroforestry and working with smallholders there. What else? Gosh, we looked at grass-fed milk, grass-fed dairies, a variety of different grass-fed dairies from the West Coast to the center, to the Midwest, and then all the way up to the Northeast. Looked at grain production, and then, of course, the beloved Apricot Lane Farms near you. From the biggest little farm, we looked at all kinds of different production there at their place. Cotton. Gosh, how could I forget cotton?
Right, that's a big deal.
It's a big deal, and it's fascinating. We've had a ton of interest coming in from the textile industry in general. There's a lot of changes happening among from different textiles: cotton, linen, wool, leather, you name it. A lot of brands that make clothing are looking at ways, like they're following Patagonia's leadership and other companies that are leading in this path of looking at how to reduce their carbon emissions and how to shore up their supply chains in a way that is, honors those people and honors that land, and continues to, supply their supply chains, because otherwise they're very vulnerable. And especially now in this time, we, at post-COVID, or midst COVID, I should say, because we're not over it, a lot of weaknesses in our food systems have been exposed. And we feel like this is a solution to it, is really looking at systematic change that is desperately needed across the board in all of our food systems, from wine to popcorn.
Totally agree. So how did you get involved in this? I mean, what was your path to doing this now?
I got so lucky. I was really like, this is the job of a lifetime. I feel like I've been working for 20 something years, 30 years on this path. And I just got really lucky to, my mentor, actually, Paul Dolan, who you know as well, kept telling me about this job, and he introduced me to some people on the board, and I started interviewing with them, and lo and behold, it worked, and I got this position. But I had worked for many years at CCOF, and they're like family to me. I was there for 16 years and working in the organic sector. And then I went for a short period working with a small agency that did animal welfare audits, and I worked with a lot of the livestock producers around the country. And yeah, then I happened to be at the right place at the right time.
Cool.
That's all I can say. Yeah.
So one of the things that I know that we were really that we found super appealing about the whole idea of the regenerative organic certification is that it kind of points the path for agriculture to be a part of the solution to some of the world's big problems, whether
Yep.
these are use of limited resources, like water or energy, whether this is something like climate change, where you're worried about the amount of carbon in the atmosphere, and you really need agriculture to be a part of the solution to that. It has to be pulling carbon out of the atmosphere, even as it's growing things.
Yep.
Is that what you point to as the biggest departure from previous sorts of farming certifications, or is it one of the other pillars? What's your when you point out what makes ROC or the ROA unique? What are the things that you really stand out to you?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's a really important point, Jason. That agriculture is the problem, but it can be the solution. And so I think it's really important not to vilify the farmers who are doing, trying to farm the best they can. Farming is really challenging, as you know, and now with climate change, it's even more challenging. And so finding ways to help those producers adopt regenerative methods and move away from that chemical treadmill that they've kind of, like, in many regions and many commodities, gotten sucked into. And I don't think farmers are really thriving. And so finding ways to help them thrive is key to this. And I think really looking at the core principles in our regenerative practices section is something to focus on. And that's where organic is failing us now in a lot of ways, where they're allowing hydroponics or soilless systems. And we really believe deeply that the only way to farm organically is to farm in the soil, in that living soil, and to keep building soil that is part of the definition of organic in the National Organic Program rule. However, by allowing hydroponics, it subverts that concept, I think. And so for us, that's a core tenet, is you minimize soil disturbance, so you preserve and build organic matter in the soil, and that provides habitat, housing for all those soil microbes. As you know, there's more living organisms in 1 teaspoon of soil than there are humans on the planet. And that's kind of the stunning statistic to cite and let people just envision this tiny little teaspoon of soil and more living things. And so many, we've only identified 15 or 20% of them. So there's so many learnings still to be had. And it's a very emergent science. It's an emergent field of looking at the soil microbiome. Also the same as looking at the human gut. And we're finding a lot of connections to the health of the human, to the soil, and to the food that we eat that comes from that soil, and the grapes that are grown, and the quality of the fruit. And so I know you also know that as a leader in organic wine grape growing. And I've worked with many of those folks up here in my region: Sonoma, Napa, Marin, Mendocino. And organic and biodynamic really led the way in looking at the quality of the grape and the quality of the wine that came from those grapes. I think there's a lot of blind tastings that have shown that, right?
Yeah, and I mean that ties in very much with the experience that the Perrins had in France. I mean, they've been farming organically since the early '60s, and it came out of this just kind of discomfort that Jacques Perrin had with the fact that he wasn't farming the way that he learned from his father.
Right.
They only used chemicals for like a decade after World War II, when that was what everyone was. If you weren't doing that, like, what were you doing? You weren't in the modern age.
Right.
And, it was in the early '60s that he decided, I think it was 1964, where he decided he was going to farm for a year without using any of the chemicals that he'd been using for the last decade. And he was blown away with how much more the wines that he made that year tasted to him like Beaucastel, like that place, than what he'd been making in recent years. And for them, that was it. That was the light bulb moment. And
right.
They haven't used any chemicals since then. And I feel like that's kind of the kind of understood, one of the real understood benefits by a lot of winemakers, but not something that I'm sure consumers really understand. They're thinking about it just in terms of, like, are you putting poisons in? Or are you not putting poisons in? Is this healthy? But I do think that the idea that your soil isn't really uniquely your soil without that microbiome that it contains, and that's going to have an impact on the the flavors that come through in the grapes and in the wines is that next step that people need to understand.
Yeah. I mean, there's this unique relationship. There's all kinds of communications going on there under the soil with those plant roots and all the microbes breaking down and bringing those whatever components and minerals in that soil that that plant needs. That microbiome is there to deliver those. And so without that, you're just replacing it with a chemical nitrogen feed or something like that. And
Right.
that is not going to give it the same essence of that terroir or the soil itself. Yeah. I mean, I think the other part too for the wine sector is that a lot of consumers tend to focus on the sulfite, what sulfites are in the wine or whether there are or are not sulfites. And it's hard for organic grape growers and winemakers to get that for the labeling claims. It's really challenging to relay
Right.
that to consumers because of all the restrictions around that between the different federal agencies that engage there. And so I think it's a bit of a disservice, honestly, for organic wine grape growers that they can't put it prominently on their front label.
Right.
Right. And so that's a conversation we've had. But
Yeah,
yeah.
it's honestly, I think it's discouraged organic farming
Mm-hmm.
in the wine world, and even it's discouraged people who are farming organically from talking about it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which is like exactly the opposite of what you would hope a good organic standard would do.
Yeah. I mean, I think what they do use it to talk about is like neighborly relations and how they're um, protecting the water or the riparian areas within a region or wherever a winery may be located, rather than talking about the quality of the fruit and the essence of that land coming out in that wine.
And
So,
I think that's one of the ways in which the way that the organic standard has been written has kind of ceded the floor to the sustainability certifications, which are much less rigorous in terms of, by and large, much less rigorous in terms of making sure that you're really farming responsibly. But because you can talk about it in a way that you can't talk about organic on your label,
uh,
people have come to believe that these are superior certifications, which is a source of a lot of frustration.
that's really true. I hadn't really thought about it from that perspective, but you're right, because they can talk about it all they want, but they cannot talk about organic without a lot of restrictions. Yet organic is the highest bar. It's the highest, it's the strongest label we have. And until actually it was the strongest label until rock, but I'm sorry, but that's true. I mean, rock now brings in, it's a holistic view. It's looking at animals and how the animals are treated. And that critical component that you all learned, you shared so much of your learnings around exploring that social
Yeah.
justice pillar with us. And it was really moving to me, just to hear from Jordy and to hear from your team and you on the learnings that you experienced. I'd love to hear from you on that, actually.
Yeah, I mean, so for people who don't, who maybe have not been reading the blogs and stuff that we've been writing, and if you have not, there's a really terrific one that Jordy wrote earlier this fall when we got our certification, kind of on his like taking people through the process that we went through and his excitement and enthusiasm about it. So if you have not read that, find it on our website. It's also going to be the feature story in the print newsletter that's going to be going out in a couple of weeks. But basically, this is the social welfare pillar of the ROC platform, where you have to certify that not only certified and audited that not only are you paying your team a living wage, not only are their working conditions safe, not only do they know their rights and know that they can organize if they want to, but also that you're working to build a collaborative kind of a collaborative decision-making process and a more collaborative structure rather than kind of a top-down, more directive structure. And I mean, we started doing things like having weekly meetings with the team, weekly roundtable meetings where we would talk about what we'd planned, what we had done the past week, talk about what we were planning to do the next week, get feedback. And it often would take like 10 or 15 minutes before the guys, and many of whom have been here for decades, the guys were comfortable saying, okay, well, we did this, but I feel like we should have done it this way. And then just sort of watching the way that the discussion evolves from there and watching how that changes the relationships and the interactions between the crew, between our kind of leadership team and the guys who are out there on the front lines has been, I think, really cool and really inspiring to see.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love the stories that I heard from the training that you all underwent before you went through the audit and everything else. And like about that concept of capacity building and really empowering your workers in a way that they maybe wouldn't have otherwise they might not have ever come to this. And so
Yeah.
such so much achievement with that, with going through that process and learning from you all. And now we're implementing this whole social pillar. We've done some revisions since you went through it based on the learnings we gleaned from you all. And I
Oh,
think
cool.
yeah, no, it's a really profoundly impactful aspect. And I'm excited as we move into this next phase of Rock 2.0 or whatever we want to call it. We have a lot of applicants already in the queue. It's really exciting to see because we've kind of kept it quiet. We weren't quite fully feeling ready to go and wanted to do a bit of a soft launch, like pilot 2.0 version in the short term. And we've got a lot of new systems, and you'll see because you've already replied or reapplied, and we'll be coming to see you all, I hope, before the end of this year, and I'll probably be there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if the number of inquiries that we're getting from other wineries and the number of people who've asked to come and get kind of a tour of what we're doing and ask us where the sticking points were, how hard the paperwork was,
Mm-hmm.
if that's any indication, because we're getting multiple requests a week from other vineyards and wineries
Oh,
asking this,
awesome.
then hopefully you're going to see a pretty big wave of people going for it in this next phase.
Yeah, it's probably more than any other. We've got about 40 applications in the queue right now, and there's quite a few from the wine sector. So it's exciting to see. Yeah.
Yeah, I know it's so exciting. It's one of the things that, like, I mean, we're proud to have been the participants in the pilot program and the first to jump into this, but it's the kind of thing that the more of us who are farming like this, the better it is for all of us. It's
Yeah.
something that we're proud to be the first, but we hope we're not the only ones for long at all.
You're not going to be. And that's the thing. I think the beautiful part of this movement is like, this is about collaboration and trying to share this information and scale a movement. And it's why the partnership with Rodeo Institute is really important. And they've got 3 new regional resource centers where they're trialing different regenerative organic methods in each of these regions: Iowa, Ventura, California, North Georgia, and then, of course, Pennsylvania. So it's really great to have a team of researchers and scientists trying these different methods out and being an opportunity for people to go learn more about it. I think we're going to have a lot more partnerships like that in the future too. We're really going to be aiming towards these kind of flagship ROC farms around the world that are demonstration sites where consumers can go and learn, where farmers can go and learn, and that we all are being really transparent and collaborative so that we can make change fast. Because that's the only way we're going to get there. Like, holding it precious and not sharing with the others in the industry is not going to build a movement. So I love your openness to that and how Tablas has just really led the way. It's been awesome.
Cool. That's actually a great segue into the kind of last big question that I had for you, which is kind of what's next? Like, what is the next phase, the next project, the next big thing that the ROA is trying to tackle?
Yeah, well, that's one of them. I think also really trying to find how to provide access to food for all communities, all people. We have food swamps and food deserts all around this country. We don't want this to be a thing of the elite and inaccessible to all people. So that part is really important. And so looking at some of the programs around policy changes, finding ways to have, like, your doctor gives you a prescription to fruits and veggies. And and that's happening. It's really, there's successful demonstrations of it, and we'll be working with different groups on that, I'm sure. We're also going to be doing fundraising around a farmer cost share program like the USDA does for NOP. But basically, we'll raise money and then we'll give it to farmers to pay their certifiers for the cost of this certification, just recognizing it's one more cost to a farmer. We don't want to add more burden to farmers. We wish it was the other way and that the conventional kind of chemically farms would have to pay their cost. This cheap food has all kinds of cost, and just figuring out ways to support organic farmers transitioning to regenerative organic is going to be an area that we'll be doing some fundraising around and working with other groups. There's the Mad Ag folks in Colorado. They have the Perennial Fund.
Okay.
And that's really cool. It helps fund that transition trough as farmers move from conventional to organic, and they experience a dip in yield and while they're building up their soil organic matter. So yeah, there's other partnerships like that I'm sure we'll be exploring. We'll be opening the doors. They're throwing those wide open for applicants. we'll be wanting to promote this rock seal to the world, so consumers know that when they purchase this, they are like getting in a whole suite of values with this one seal. It is like all the things you can get. There's the animal welfare we didn't even touch on, but you all went through the animal welfare, and so you know it like has to be pasture based. The animals need to experience the 5 essential freedoms, and so not allowing any CAFOs, no confined animal feedlot operations. These are all really important tenets that I think speak to a lot of consumer values. And so we'll start really working on that consumer education side of it in the coming year.
Oh, that's awesome. That sounds great.
Yeah.
Because I think that that trough that you mentioned, that's an important thing. I mean, we didn't really have that because we've been farming organically since we started, but you do hear a lot of people worrying, like, what happens when I make that leap? Like, if I go from having farmed conventionally to farming organically, even, I mean, let alone regeneratively, like, I feel pretty confident that once I get there, like, things will be good. But it's that like between here and there that scares people.
Yeah, there's a lot of, sorry.
No,
Go ahead. No, I was just saying there's a lot of unknowns. It's a scary place. It's a scary place for a farmer to be, and vulnerable.
It was really interesting, and I don't know if this is going to reassure anyone or not, but I know in our when we moved from organic to farming biodynamically, we started with 20 acres that we decided to do just kind of a swath across the vineyard to go biodynamic, and we were expecting the benefits to be long term in terms of like healthier vines. We wouldn't have to replant as soon. And instead, we ended up picking the wines, even in that first year, as among the very best lots that we had in the cellar. And that was true the next year also. And that was sort of what encouraged us to take that next step, bring in our own flock of sheep, go fully biodynamic across the whole vineyard. I mean, we saw improvements in quality and in vine health and vineyard health pretty much right away.
Wow. That's remarkable. I'm glad to hear that. And they're perennials. And so, different systems, I'm sure, respond in a different way. Their roots are so much deeper.
Right.
But,
like if you think of the continuum between like conventional farming and regenerative organic, we were already like here. So it wasn't like, I mean, there was this whole swath of transition that we didn't have to do because of where we started. But certainly anybody who's out here watching, who is considering this and thinking, I don't know how much, if I can do it. I don't know how expensive it's going to be. I don't know what it's going to take. We encourage you to reach out to us. We're happy to take you through what we've done and help get more people involved in it. It's really something that's the more people who are doing it, the better for all of us.
I feel like there's going to be an industry kind of cohort in this wine sector of a group of real leading wine grape growers who want to do that, because I've heard from a number of others too, and maybe that's something we should talk about, awesome. Making available and like coordinating just roundtables or something. And
I mean, I know we worked with the CAFF, the California Association of Family Farmers, on a series of dry farming seminars here that we hosted here in recent years. If we can do something similar with ROC, we would love to. But obviously, we're maybe a few months from being at a place in the pandemic where something like that is feasible, but
I know
it's not going to last forever. And these changes that we're all working on are long-term things.
Absolutely. Maybe next spring. But yeah, I'm familiar with the CAF program, and they're working with the dry farming. And we could easily emulate some regional kind of gatherings of workshops or something. We could do it up here, down there at your place. Yeah, I think that's a really fantastic idea for when we're allowed to get out and hit the road.
Cool. Count us in.
Yeah, right on. Well, thanks for having me. This wasn't as scary as I thought.
I'm happy. It was great. I really appreciate you coming on to do this. I know that we're super inspired by the work that you're doing, and are excited to be a part of it, and excited to hopefully point the way for as many other people to farm like the world depends on it as we could.
Right on. Yeah, we've been humbled by your efforts, and so glad you're with us on this journey. It's been awesome. So thank you, Jason. Thanks for having me today.
You're welcome.
And talk to you very soon.
Cool. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Okay. Bye.
Just a last couple of housekeeping notes. Um, Again, we are going to be continuing to wine taste outdoors for the foreseeable future. So if we are taking appointments, it's beautiful even in the winter in Paso Robles most of the time, and we're doing what we can to keep people warm for those chilly mornings. But again, we're grateful for everyone's support. Thank you for tuning in today, and I will talk to you again in a couple of weeks. So.